And they were like, you have another sister that you don't know about. You have a secret sister.
I've been dressed in pink leotards and a diaper doing 30 singing telegrams in February in Chicago.
The only person who was there was John Houseman, who was the founder of the school.
And now you're a Disney princess, is that right? Am I phrasing that correctly?
That's absolutely right. And that's another wish I had. So the universe, gives you what you want in mysterious ways.
Love, love, love. Oh, love wins, love wins. No, because love is conditional. Because love is based on the contingency that you can accept that person for whoever. It's about forgiveness.
Right.
That's what America needs to find.
Yeah.
It ain't love.
Because I don't know if you know this, but I think very few of us in the world have found a dead body.
Probably not, and probably not under the circumstances that I found it.
Sure. So what was the deal?
Join us for all this and more on At the Elephants with Rob Morris, available now on YouTube and iTunes podcasts. Share, like, subscribe, now. Come on, get to it. Do it, you want to.
Says I better get used to the gaddies.
Hello and welcome to At the Elephants with Rob Morris. I'm your host. I already said it, didn't I? Oh well, whatever. I'm your host, Rob Morris, and I'm very excited to bring you the second part of my interview with Bob Francesconi. I'm sure you noticed at the beginning there, it didn't start out like the normal episodes. Threw a little promo at you, a little commercial at the very beginning for season 2 here that we put together. I wanted to say a very quick few things before we get to the continuation of this interview because it is lengthy and I don't want to waste your time. So for those of us who are just joining us on episode 12 with Bob and have not listened to previous episodes, I definitely suggest that you go back and listen to as many episodes as possible. I would work my way backward from where you are right now, just because they get better as they go forward. Not because of the guests, but because of my ability to put the show together. So it's sounding better now than it used to, in my opinion. So work your way back and listen to some of the older interviews. They're great. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. The button should be very close to you right now. If you're listening on iTunes podcasts, subscribe as well, and you'll be notified as soon as the latest episodes are out, which I have some wonderful episodes coming at you soon. Joe Mills, already interviewed him. He's going to be on the show soon. Tanya Bailoff, who everyone loves baby, will be on the show very soon. Also, Mary Irwin, Bandits on the Run, Dean Wilcox, Damon Carmona, and a number of people that are headed your way. So please subscribe and stay tuned. Also, drop a like on the video that you're watching right now if it's via YouTube. So, back to the Sconi talk. So we followed him from Eureka, California to Humboldt State University. He was going to be an astronaut. He was going to be pre-med. All that went out the window when he went to Humboldt University and met James Donlin. Over the next 10 years, Jim and Bob developed their own tradition of mask and movement work. And when we last left our noble hero, he had just gotten an offer to teach at a little school in North Carolina. And I want to say, as we're about to get started here, last thing, share this with people who you think would appreciate it. There's a lot of shows mentioned in this episode that Bob worked on, a lot of different actors and designers and various people that he's worked with over the years and productions that he's been a part of. If you worked on one of these productions, let the other people in the production know that we had this chat about it. Tell them, hey, Bob's talking about you over on that podcast. Send it their way. Without further ado, Mr. Bob Francesconi.
I talked with my wife, and we had 2 kids at the time, and we decided to try it, thinking it'd only be here a year.
Well, sometimes people are wrong about things, Bob.
Yeah. But it's such a seductive place.
Yes, it is.
As I heard you explain.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the talent is so seductive.
Yeah.
I couldn't be who I am if I didn't have the kind of people that were participating in
Yeah.
in my work.
Yeah.
It's funny that so I was reunited with James Donlin, and then he left.
Like how long?
He was here less.
How long were you here together?
A year, and then he's gone. I said, Jim, what are you doing? And he took a job in California at Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara, and.
Did he stay there
He stayed there a while.
Gotcha.
And he's from Santa Barbara.
Oh.
And so he
Can't fault him for that.
so he just felt a longing, and he wanted to perform more. And this job
Right.
couldn't. It wasn't really that, and so he went more into the performing realm. I'd never considered myself a performer, and I was more than happy to remain a trainer of actors. That was really intriguing to me,
Right.
and so here I am.
Are you the longest serving faculty member?
There was one other who was longer.
Oh, but currently you are, for sure,
yes.
right?
Yeah, I'm the only one left
Yeah.
from the early years.
I know Tanya was a guest for a long time,
Yeah,
right?
and part-time, but
Yeah.
she's not. Molly is the longest
Oh, okay.
of the school, I believe, 45 years.
Wow.
And that's why that studio is named after her.
Fairly enough. Sure.
And she came here actually as a young dancer off Broadway,
Yeah.
and she had two very little kids when she started teaching here, and. I didn't meet Molly really, and I'd been here a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
We'd shared an office together right from the beginning.
Gotcha.
So I actually shared an office with Molly constantly for almost 35 years.
Wow.
And then she left
Right.
3 years ago. So it's been an interesting transition.
She left 3 years ago?
I think it's 3 years ago. She's still teaching part-time.
Right. But she left being full-time faculty.
Yeah, I think I'm a little.
How's she liking it?
She loves it.
Yeah? What's she doing? Other than taking care of that monster that you
She's
have
taking
at
care
your
of the
house?
monster.
Yeah.
He's not a monster, but he's
very
a
cute.
handful. He's a handful.
Yeah, I've seen some of his destructive.
Yeah, Molly used to train dogs,
Oh, really?
and that's what she's doing with him. In fact, tonight she's at dog school.
Aw.
He's-
Yeah, I feel like I saw some graduation photos
Yeah.
at some point.
Essentially, he's flunked dog school twice now.
You're a real winner over there, Bob.
Yeah.
Don't you also train, one could argue, animals for a living a little bit? You'd think together the two of you could whip that thing into shape. You
No,
stay away?
It's not my thing.
Yeah. Got you.
I have a hard enough time training you.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's not too terribly different.
No,
I'm
it
sure you've had some students in 38 years that have felt as equally destructive as
Oh yeah.
that dog.
Yeah.
For sure.
But you know what has happened, because I have such a long history now with the program, that it's allowed the mask movement stuff to, and I've mentioned this before, to really evolve into being very integrated in the acting program.
Oh, and it is. Yeah,
you
big
don't
time.
get that in an ordinary mask class.
I have talked to so many other people that I either went to high school with or the other college I went to, you know. You get to New York and you compare training and you talk about it. And I've never heard of anybody else talk about their mask teacher the way the students at this school talk about you and your program, which I'm sure has so much to do with the fact that it comes from you and from Jim originally, without having that tradition that you speak of. What else do you think it is about this program that you've built, specifically your curriculum, that's so specific? I mean, and that's the thing I loved about the conservatory when I first got here, is we were all talking about what we were going to do because we knew, because they told us. The older students would be like, oh, and this year you'll do this, and this year you'll do that. Oh, and wait for third year, it's so great, blah, 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 blah. And the way they speak about you and your work is with such reverence and such respect. What do you think it is about the way your class works that really sticks with everybody so much and really gets so deep?
I think I was talking with the first years a little earlier today, because now they're just getting exposed to it. And they're just coming to grips with the fact that I won't tell them what to do. I explain it intellectually. If I were to tell an actor what to do, they would be copying me.
Right.
And I don't want that. You must be available in the moment with an acting partner.
Yeah.
In order to be available in the moment, it has to be organic.
Right.
And it has to be a question of self-discovery.
Right.
So, the mask and the movement is unique in that regard, in that you're always in a process of self-discovery, and you gain greater freedom through the mask.
Right.
I'm fond of saying that because it covers you up, it reveals you.
Right. And God does it in class. I mean, you get to know your classmates in that class. I think that's what you're saying. It's like it's the way you get to know you and also your classmates in that space where you're allowing yourself to be available in that way. It's just unlike anything else I've experienced in my life.
And you can't hide behind the mask. It'll go dead. And
right.
it's very...
And you'll feel that in comparison to the room.
And, a general movement class, or like we did a movement improvisation today, that there was, I was both at first and second year, by the way, today, there was a moment in that movement improvisation where all of a sudden the ensemble hooks in. And it's very evident when it happens.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then it flies.
Mm-hmm.
The first years they did one that went about 30 minutes long.
Wow.
Earlier in the day...
That's a pretty long improv.
Yeah, earlier in the day, the second years did one 45 minutes long.
Whoa.
And it was interesting. And I didn't... in the second year acting... mass class, sorry. In the second year mass class, I often come back to just pure movement, just to connect. So today was one of those days. But... I was also coming to that in the first year class. So I experienced both in one day, and the different dynamics that first and second year bring to it.
Right.
First year's just beginning to trust being available. The second years have found it.
Do you appreciate in the way that, I mean, one of the things I loved about this program, and I think it's why I do this show and talk to people, is I'm just so fascinated by human psychology, where people come from and why they do the things they do, all that kind of stuff. It's just been endlessly fascinating to me my whole life. You've had this unique opportunity to put 38 years worth of students through this ever-evolving machine of sorts that you've built, and watch them respond to the work that you do, and you've taken such diligent care to note everything you do, make adjustments on each individual thing. What do you think the density of all of this stuff that you've watched has given you perspective on? How do you think about things differently, having watched us play around in the dark for 38 years? It seems like an eternity to me, and it seems like so much. Like we went, these classes that are 90 minutes felt like they were a week long sometimes, because you're just in there and it's this other world, and it's like doing some kind of hallucinogenic drug sometimes. It just takes you to another place, and then you take it off, and it's like that I'm above water kind of thing, and I'm breathing again. Well, where do we go? What do we do? Like some of those things are still dreams in my head, and that seems like so much to me. 2 years of my life. 38 years is a long time to spend under those lights with those masks on, watching us play. What have you learned from us?
Well, one of the things that I've become more and more aware of in recent years is the world of innocence. And to me, the world we're exploring, and the height of it will be the red nose element. It's a world of innocence, but it's also a dangerous world.
Yeah, Some of that neutral mass stuff, I'm telling you, I still have nightmares. And I don't wake up mad about them because I'm like, oh, that was a good day.
Right.
But yeah, there's dark stuff in my head because of some of those days.
But that world of innocence allows one to be present and to be able to do anything.
Yeah.
And the other thing that has cropped up, and we've already talked about it, I have a greater understanding now of what I mean by stillness and silence. And I finally have come to understand the nature of the contact exercise. In the early years, I didn't know what it was. I knew the mechanics of it.
You're talking about the neutral mass contact stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I've carried it further. Now I've begun to apply the concept in everything else.
Huh.
And I've begun to do that with the red nose, actually.
Huh.
And even begin to use that term. And simply what it is two actors making contact in the space, or two intentions, there's a better way of putting it, making contact in the space.
Right.
And allowing the next moment to grow from that.
Right.
Which is the whole nature of the neutral mask. But it is also now the whole nature of what I see evolving in all 4 years.
Yeah.
Like the movement improvisation today, there was a great amount of stillness in it. Okay?
Yeah.
And so the moment that I allowed two figures to actually touch, which is somewhat well into it, there was true contact between them.
Right.
And not manipulation.
Yeah.
And that concept has become clearer and clearer.
Right.
In recent years. And for some reason, I feel in the last couple of years, there's been a real transition in my thinking.
Yeah.
It's still...
Transitioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cloudy.
No, totally.
But I see glimpses of clarity of where...
Right.
And what I think I'm really seeing is application to the traditional acting process.
Right. To me, that's the thing that I see all the time that I think is so beneficial about your class for actors, and I speak as humbly as I can about this, but to me, when you approach a text, the moment before, what's going on before the thing happens, before the scene, before the climax, before the door opens, the before is blown past so often. And disregarded and not even thought about, and they just jump with the first thing that happens. And that's something. But your class spends so much time building who we are before the contact moment.
Exactly.
That we're in such a space to really deal with it and take it in as, nothing ever starts with one thing. It's always been a succession of constantly moving stuff, and you've really got to sit on the ground and hold the sand and feel it fall through your fingers before you're going to be able to deal with the visitor or whoever, whomever.
And this is actually, I'm saying much the same thing. There was another revelation. I get an awful lot of inspiration, I should say. I think that from when I direct a play.
Right.
It's always different. But I work a play much the same way I do the mask class.
Mm-hmm.
And I use, and sometimes I use the masks in the play.
Right.
But when I did Scapino, I think you saw it actually.
I did see it.
Quite a few years ago now.
2008?
Yeah.
In or about 2009, maybe.
Spencer Trenwith was Scapino. But that rehearsal process was eye-opening to me because I didn't speak in it.
The entire time?
No, in the beginning of it.
Oh, okay.
So the entire...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it happened by accident. We were seated at the table, And I thought we would kind of read the text or do something, but I didn't do that. Instead, I piled the noses on a block in the center of the tables. And we all looked at them, and I went, and they looked at me, and I pointed to my nose, and I went, boom, boom. They got the nose.
Right.
And then we began character development. They knew who they were playing and all that. And I set up a series of tasks, creating newspaper flowers, who knows what it would be. And I conducted all that silently. And then we began a week or so into it, we began to read portions of the text, but I wouldn't comment on it.
No notes.
Not in that way.
Huh. Right.
Okay, so I would stop, hold up my hand or something, indicate, take a breath, or zing it.
Right.
And they got really into it. I mean,
Right.
really into it, and because it was fun.
Yeah.
It was really fun. Eventually, I had to, talk.
Right.
But in the directorial process of it, I learned, I always did this, but I began to rely on both table work and movement work simultaneously.
And before that, you hadn't done that as much.
Not as much. It was more traditional,
How much do you think that's affected your work?
enormously.
Yeah.
I actually did, quite a while ago, you've heard me talk about my all-male production of Taming of the Shrew.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 20 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of it then because we had the mask,
Right.
because we had to develop character.
And it just seemed appropriate to
Yeah.
work it early.
Work it in that manner.
Yeah.
But not all plays could I apply that to.
Right.
But now,
It's weird to put a mask on a soldier.
yeah. But now what I do is a whole set of, and this is going to occur with Blackwatch, but when I did tracers,
Mm-hmm.
the way tracers really evolved out was through a series of movement improvisations around the text,
Mm-hmm.
nonverbal.
Yeah.
So we would take a specific moment and work it physically. We also had to learn how to march and all that. We're going to have to
Right.
do that in Blackwatch.
And you put those boys through some serious PT, if I remember
We
correctly.
really did. I mean,
Because you had some boys who were game for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Jacoby and
Yeah, Patrick, right? Or was Patrick in it?
No,
Johnny.
yeah, Johnny.
Johnny
of
was
course,
in it,
yeah.
who was down to do some push-ups.
Yeah. So I really think that depending on the nature of the play, and usually they're the kind of plays that I do, that the combination of the text and then breaking away from it to movement back to the text keeps it vital and alive.
Mm-hmm.
This happens consistently when I do this. In that long ago shrew,
Mm-hmm.
we did something on night number 1, improvisationally, that became incorporated in the
Like
play,
final production?
The final production. The other thing that is I use heavily more and more now is that I use music. I use song
Right.
with the play.
Often live.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Always if I can.
Yeah.
Because that's another element of that being present in the space.
Yeah.
And I don't use a lot of extras, music or
Right.
sound.
Right.
I prefer a bare space and silence.
Yeah.
There's that word again.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think that's how people would describe your. I mean, I know people from your generations of being here who will go see a play and be like, there was like nothing there. It was like a Sconi play. It was like it was like a bench and then 2 guys.
Yeah.
Like, and they had a conversation for like 2 hours
Yeah.
on a bench, and then occasionally they would turn it upside down and it was a canoe, but mostly it was a bench.
yeah,
Yeah.
with learned ladies,
Right.
essentially a bare stage,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
costume, and some singing. But one other thing happened quite by accident. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I noticed that actually Becca had a nose, and Lindsay had a nose.
Like with them?
Yeah, with them.
Right.
David Bowen had a nose. And I got to thinking, and because Learned Ladies is not only an intellectual discourse, it's very physical comedy.
Right.
I rehearsed some scenes eventually, silently, but in the nose. And it wasn't those characters, but it was it was an extension of the character, but it was definitely a silent clown. And
With Moliere.
With Moliere. And what it did is humanize it.
Mm-hmm.
And humanize them and got them out of that,
Yeah.
the traditional 17th century posing.
And that comedy was still there when it was appropriate with like Benton and Alex.
Yeah.
And the places where that was part of what's going on, but it really brought the rest of them, for sure, Jasmine and Becca and David and Lindsay and that whole group, really brought them down to earth.
Yeah. So that was that.
Yeah.
When I don't know if you saw Vinegar Tom. It's the same era as Tracers, but a year before, I think. I used.
It was the year before.
I used the idea of manipulation of bodies in Vinegar Tom, but I rehearsed it with some of the exercises that we do in class.
Mm-hmm. I came to some of those rehearsals, actually.
Yeah, I remember you. And that enabled that to take on a whole other thing.
Mm-hmm.
I
had a killer lighting designer.
Oh, he was terrific.
John Goldman. Didn't you work again with him?
Yeah, I
on
did.
Tracers, right? Or
he
something else.
He assisted Tracers. I worked with him on another project. Can't quite remember.
He was good.
Goldman was good, and another thing.
I'm sure he's still great.
So, in Vinegar Tom and Tracers, the element of lighting becomes so important.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to come from the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And when it connects, it really connects.
Mm-hmm.
An element of a minimal set, it allows for a theatricality to occur.
One of my favorite images from that show is in the very beginning when she's in the field with, was it Austin Vaccaro?
Yeah.
The lighting in that and just he had this long hair at the time was all beautiful and like this, the imagery of that, a lot of that down lighting just was so perfect, but it always came from like, they would mention it. You know what I mean? They would say like the moon or something like that, and then all of a sudden it would be there. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. And the hard thing I've always found, number one, is to be patient in a rehearsal process.
Is it difficult for you?
It is. It's very hard for me to not tell an actor what to do.
The great struggle.
And sometimes you have to because it's wrong.
I gotta be honest. I would have guessed that you would have told me that was easier for you. Like if I think of the directors in my head of who's gonna be better at just letting something go, I would have put you in it. But you don't see yourself that way.
No, not at all. I tightly control it, but I have to guide it.
Right.
I know eventually what I want, and not right away.
Sure.
But this is how I stage a play. Once I see your physical impulse and you don't follow through with it, I'm going to make you follow through with it. And that becomes the staging.
Right.
Always. So I'm looking for your physical impulse. And I
really just getting actors out of their own way.
Yeah. I hate the conventional. This goes back to my roots over in Humboldt State.
Yeah.
In the staging of the play, you've got to create a world, which to me is just like the world of The Mask, but that openness, things happen.
Right.
But the world is not a naturalistic world. Now, even so far as you take Homecoming, a naturalistic play. Well, I take that back. It's got too many pauses in it to be naturalistic. Built-in pauses, right? So you got to follow that.
Yeah.
You have to follow what that is, but that begins to lead you into a behavior
Right.
that needs to be full.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a theatricality that needs to happen. I'm very visual, as you know,
Yes, I do.
and if I don't follow my visual, organic impulses, the play becomes static.
Right.
But the trick is not to impose in Sergeant Musgrave's dance.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a very theatrical play, bare stage, very high stakes throughout. Theatricality built into it by the author. And it's trying to bring all elements into that world. And here's where I wasn't patient. We get into first tech, and the lighting designer who I worked with in Learned Ladies the next year, didn't seem to me to be developing a vision of the play that was the play we were doing. And I jumped in on it. And the more I fiddled with it and say, no, bring a light here and all that, the muddier it became.
Right. So you actually made it worse.
I made it worse
Gotcha.
because I was confusing the direction that he was going in. Now, I preached to myself about actors, let them discover it.
Right.
But I didn't let the lighting designer discover it.
Yeah.
So
It's important to learn, I guess, that it's that's just a universal notion of working with other artists.
Yeah.
You really can't dictate.
No, and we got into the first hour and a half of tech. I realized what was happening, and I stopped the tech. And I called Manny over privately, and I said, I'm intruding too much. I'm confusing you. I'm sorry. And I called Frank Lombardi over and told him what was happening here, that I wanted to start the tech over again, but I wanted to step out of it, of the lighting, and give the lighting people a chance to work.
I think it's important to recognize just for a moment that a teacher who's been working here for 38 years and has been doing this job for a long time went to an undergraduate 22-year-old lighting designer and said, my bad. I got it wrong. Please go back to doing your work.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a significant part of the kind of faculty we have here in lots of departments. Not, I don't think just
Right.
drama, but I think there is a willingness to just have that humility and say, like, look, we're all trying to do this amorphous thing that we don't understand, and we're all going to try things that don't work. And I'm quick to say, hey,
Yeah.
I tried that. It didn't work. Yeah.
So I stepped back, and he lit it in 2 days.
It's beautiful.
And I tweaked it a little bit, but I do the hardest plays for a lighting designer because there's no set to light.
Right. It's often black.
And yeah, it's often black, and there may be a few beams hanging down around, or
Right.
and
Like four shadows you can make.
and that's difficult.
Right.
And
But that's good that you know that that's what you're bringing to them as a challenge.
yeah, and then I ended up working with Manny again, an easier play to light, Learned Ladies, but he did a spectacular job with it.
Oh, yeah, and a lot to light.
Yes, and subtle, and I told him right from the beginning, I'm not going to intrude.
You got it. Yeah. Lesson learned.
It's a lesson that I've been learning.
Right.
The problem is, if you know a little bit, like I do, about lighting and set, you become dangerous.
Right.
And
So what do you give them when you, I mean, how do they react? How does a scene designer react when you come in and you're like, so I'm thinking a bench, maybe sometimes it's a canoe, black floor. Like, what do they say to that? Do they say, okay, I guess I'll try to find some way to make it cool?
I see. The first thing I always ask is this your thesis project? But no, I in the earlier years, I got exactly that. Their face would just sink.
Right.
I felt so bad.
Right.
Just like I rarely use sound, and the poor sound designer, they don't even assign one to me anymore.
Right.
Although I need one for Black Watch. There's a lot of explosions going on.
The wig department must have been surprised to get your call for Learned Ladies. They're
were.
like, he never needs us.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
They were.
And they did a great job too.
Yeah, they really did.
Really beautiful.
So it's an answer to your question. Now people know now, and they look at the choice of plays, and they know that probably this was chosen to suit my taste.
Right.
I also learned over the years not to accept a play if it doesn't speak to me.
Sure. Yeah, that seems smart. What makes a play speak to you?
That I don't know. It's not a particular style.
Sure.
But I tell you,
I mean, clearly, the stuff I've seen you do since I've been here is all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, simply tracers to Moliere is a pretty big jump.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in general, and then there's been all sorts of things.
But there's a through line connecting them.
Right.
In
You're still trying to figure out what that is, or you know what it is?
I know, I think what it is. It's a through line that it's how I use the space. It's how I use all the theatrical elements, and ultimately, my sense of creating a world. I don't think I haven't done a Shakespeare in a while now, but I don't. That appeals to me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A 1930s play would not appeal to me.
No.
No.
You don't want to do Time of Your Life?
I've done it.
Have you?
Yes, I have. That actually does appeal to me because it's so theatrical.
Sure.
But
Well, who doesn't want to do a play with a pinball machine in it?
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer. You have to think about that.
But I'm not terribly interested in some of the others of that period.
Right.
What would interest me is a Miller.
Yeah, sure.
Or a Strindberg.
Yeah.
But these are all plays with high stakes, whether it be comic or serious.
Right.
And generally, plays over the last 10 years have all been interesting because I'm not certain everyone can do them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure. I mean, I've only been here for like 8 of those 10 years, but I'd agree.
I enjoy a play with enormous problems.
When you did Blood Knot, I remember watching that and being like, "How? I don't even know how I would do that." And I love Ethel Fugard. I love his work. I worked on Master Harold and the Boys when I was in high school, and I saw Molly Maxner's version a few years ago, which was incredible. And and I love that work. But Blood Knot, I was like, I don't know how you even started with that play, and especially with those 2 guys that you have. I was just thinking like, I had no idea.
That was one of the more difficult exercises.
And that was really a bare bones because you were unsupported, right?
Totally unsupported.
Yeah.
I had 2 actors who actually didn't fit the casting type.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, very talented, but totally not those types.
Yeah. And it was interesting to watch them transform.
Right.
I mean, really transform.
Oh, and they were superb.
Yes.
I was blown away by that show.
And I used the neutral mask an awful lot in it. And
A lot of encounters.
yeah,
There's
and
a lot of silence in
yeah,
that play.
and I've worked with those two actors a lot, either through class or second-year projects and
Right.
that. And I knew that they could transform.
Uh-huh.
And the seeds of that, of Blood and Knot, actually manifested themselves in Homecoming,
Oh, okay.
in a way. One thing that was common to them, people were really surprised. There was no makeup in either of them.
Hmm.
I'm a firm believer in these kinds of plays that the actor transforms, but not, you don't paint the face on.
Right.
I mean, we're looking at Homecoming there,
Yeah, there's the poster.
and that what they did was transformed internally and physically, which changed the energy of the look. So
Right.
by the end of it, you began to think this guy is 72 years old.
Right. And you think that carries a lot more weight than painting it on.
Yeah. And that comes from the neutral mask. You know, we do the 4 ages of man,
Mm-hmm.
and I say that in that age is a point of view.
Right.
It's not a funny body position.
Exactly.
Okay. I firmly believe right now, as I'm seated here, I feel 22.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially now that my hips are new.
Right.
The
The way you do that warm up every day.
But I
is
feel
miraculous.
physically like 22. I know I'm not because I'm stiffer and less agility and all that kind
Sure.
of stuff. And when you look in the mirror, we can really see it. but my point of view is that no, physically I feel no different.
Mm-hmm.
Point of view, I know I have a range of experiences, dead bodies included,
Right.
that change you somehow.
Yeah.
When I was working the Parks and Recreation Department,
Right.
and I did a day camp
Uh-huh.
in arts, in creative drama, I knew that seed was somehow going to be present with me. Okay?
Yeah.
And so it's still here.
Yeah.
It's still here. But I didn't know then where here
What it was
going
going to be.
No.
Which is exactly what you were talking about with working with the actors.
Yeah. And, you know, Gerald Friedman talks about spine, character spine.
Right.
Okay. I had the beginning of that character spine way back when. I really won't know what the journey is
Right.
until I'm dead. Or, as you said, that moment of revelation.
Right. Yeah. And so it really endorses the argument, too, that truly the spine doesn't ever change. You know,
No.
once you discover it,
Yeah.
and maybe it's that awareness
Yeah.
that really sets it in place
Yeah.
and says, I'm not going to be an astronaut
Right.
or a doctor,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, and I think it's really miraculous that can happen, and you can end up leading yourself to a place where you're responsible for showing that spine to so many people. I feel like that's a lot, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but what your job is truly just getting these kids to look in the mirror, really,
Yeah.
you know, in a very real, very organic, comfortable way where they can learn to look in the mirror and not have a problem with it and see possibility and not a lack thereof.
Exactly. That's well put. That really is. And you asked me what I learned. Exactly what you stated.
Wow.
And getting more comfortable with that notion.
Yeah. Scared the hell out of me in the beginning. I think it does. I just think that's unavoidable. It's so scary. I left, Texas. I came here. I went back a few years later after kind of starting the program, being in the middle of it. I talked to some of my friends, they're like, you're just a totally different person. And they would say that, and I was like, no, I really think I'm just more of the person I've always been than I ever have been.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still me. I'm as me as I've ever been. In fact, you're just getting to see it. You know, I'm sharing it with you because I am not afraid of that anymore. Which I think I definitely learned in your class for sure. And with Mary.
Yeah.
I gotta give her credit for sure too. There's a lot of looking in the mirror in that room, which is absolutely essential. My last question for you, because we went way longer than any interview I've ever done. Yeah, sorry, Bob. I got carried away. I didn't even look.
I didn't even. I
almost
got,
at
I
140.
got carried away too.
It's gonna be 2 episodes. I'm gonna have to do 2 different ones. It'll be part 1 and 2, which is fine. My last question for you is: every year that I've been around this school, so since 2008, they've said, well, you know, Sconi's retiring next year. He's done. But you say you feel 22. So how long you think you got doing this amazing gig that we're all so grateful for? It's 38 now. How far are you going?
Well, I don't think I'm going to beat my wife.
In general, I'd say don't set yourself up for that kind of competition.
No.
And she's 45, right?
Yeah.
She did 45 years.
She did 45. There's no way I'm going to make that.
No, you don't think so?
If I lived alone, I would. But I don't live alone.
That's true.
And there is that consideration.
Yeah.
But I have to say that the ending point is on the horizon.
Sure.
I don't know how soon that is.
Right.
There is coming a time that the curtain comes down.
Sure.
And whatever work we've accomplished has ended, and it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't know what that next element is, nor am I terribly concerned. I always believe that an answer will present itself.
I think I learned that from you.
Yeah.
I mean that. I mean that sincerely. I jump and let the net appear more in my life than I think I ever would have if I hadn't put so many of those masks on.
Good.
Yeah.
So there's no easy answer to when the curtain comes down or the door closes. I just know that I see the curtain and I see the door.
Right.
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, it's a difficult thing because when I was looking at the first year, of course, I see the curtain, but I want to finish it.
Right. And I'm sure people continue to enter and inspire you, and you're like, well, I can't go now.
Yeah.
I want to see what they can do.
But, in the growth of the institution, there also comes a time that it needs to evolve.
What do you think that means for this place?
For this place?
Mm-hmm.
It'll be different. I don't want to appear too pompous here, but
I wouldn't worry about that.
the at one time the whole mask assistantship was thought of, not by me. Have people come in and observe what I do, and then maybe out of that someone could step in. I was always against that.
No predecessor. Someone new, something different.
What I firmly believe that for a teacher to be good, you have to do your own work. So just like in class, I try not to tell someone what to do.
Right. Sometimes we're lucky if
they
you speak
need
at
to
all.
discover it. That comes really from my own process. So, yeah, I came up with this mask stuff, but I'm not interested in someone copying it. And I don't think the school should be interested in someone copying it. They can do masks,
Right.
do anything, but it shouldn't be trying to duplicate this moment in time.
Right. So do you think then that there's no room for tradition to exist based on your work? I mean, I think that's going to be hard to avoid. There's kids running around all over the world now wearing red noses the way you wear a red nose.
I know that. And so there is that tradition.
Right.
But I have no interest of giving you my workbooks
Right.
and having you copy what I did.
Right.
And, the last two, we've only done this assistantship twice.
Right.
Thomas Rao.
Right. Was it Mendez?
No, Thomas Rao. Actually, Nathan did it a year or two ahead, but that
Wasn't official?
That wasn't official.
Gotcha.
And
So Thomas Rao.
and Jose Aranda, and Nathan too. Truthfully, they only observe the work, not to duplicate it, but to inform what they do.
Right.
That's what I'm interested in.
And neither of those three guys are going to try to copy you. If even if they were asked to do that, I don't think they'd even try.
And as a consequence, each of them are developing their own unique thing.
Right.
Thomas is movement oriented. Nathan is now directorial oriented, and Jose is acting oriented.
Damn fine teacher.
So, they'll carry on whatever they
Right.
glean from it.
Yeah.
But I have several people asking me to write a book, and several people want to do a video documentary.
I think that would be pretty interesting. Would you be up for something like that? Do you want to do those things?
No, not really.
I kind of would have guessed that.
Some people are talking at me or trying to persuade me.
Right. Like in the same way that like Isaac Klein is working on that book for Gerald, like someone would kind of work with you for a while on it, or
There's that version of it, and then the version that is interesting to me, but I don't know if I can be here that long, is to follow an entire class through from first year through fourth year.
video-wise.
And document their growth in the various classes.
But what would a video crew do to a math class?
I don't know.
You'd have to like do GoPros in the corner or something, like, because that would be so intrusive.
Yeah.
But what an interesting challenge. You like that.
And also follow through the various production those students
Right.
in the
shows that they're in.
in the various shows that they're in.
Yeah, that would be fascinating.
I just think we're talking too much.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot. That is an interesting idea, though. I think that's also an interesting concept outside of just your class, like it might be interesting to follow a particular class. But then again, it's like, what does that do to their dynamic and the way they relate to the other students on campus?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, their class is the one that has the video crew follow them around everywhere,
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I would hate, and I go back to the word innocence, I would hate to lose the innocence of discovery
Right.
of just you and I in the class together.
Right.
And it's a unique moment
Right.
that no one else can experience.
I gotta say, I was almost hesitant to ask you to do this because I was like, I'm gonna want to talk about class, and I wonder if he wants to have that conversation with such a large audience. But I think the only people who listen to this are people who want to hear that conversation anyway.
That's what I think too.
And even the people who listen to this who haven't been in your classes necessarily, I think there's something really to take away from, like I said, and I mentioned forever ago, was there's such a reverence that everybody speaks of your program specifically with, that is it's of such high respect, and, often it's funny because it's such a silly class so often, but it's taken so seriously. And I've heard you tell more than one person, it's just the mask, it's just a nose, it's not magic.
Right.
It's silicone and rubber, or whatever it is. It's string. You don't have to over glorify it. That actually takes away a little bit. But But you almost can't help it because the experiences that you have in that room are so profound, unique to Studio 716, and the people that you shared those moments with. I think it just, it changes us for forever in such a big way that you can't help but take it so seriously. When we were, slapping each other on the butt and falling down and running around picking each other up and screaming like a monkey and all that stuff still happened.
There's one other thing that's a kick in the pants.
Sure.
Now we are getting so many students whose parents went here
Right.
that I taught.
You know who I'm talking to sometime soon is the Lumens, who are their kid's the first double legacy, right? Gabe both of his parents went here.
Yeah. His dad, Lance, was in my first freshman class.
Wow.
And Kristen was in my first second-year class.
That's wild. I'm a big softie for weird cosmic things like that work out. Like, I'm really appreciative of the fact that Ashley was Gerald's first class of directors, and she was one of my teachers, and I was the last class of his directors. And something about that kind of synchronicity I just think is so neat.
Yeah.
And it's cool when people come in. Gus Halper. Mary Kate, right?
Mary
also
Kate.
graduated.
Lucas Hedges.
Right, of course, Lucas, yeah.
A few years before, Alec Reed.
Oh, I didn't know she was a legacy.
Yeah.
She was 09.
Yeah. Her dad, Paige Mosley, was in my first second-year class, contemporary of Kristen.
Yeah.
In fact, they were boyfriend and girlfriend together for a while.
How crazy is that to see a couple in your math class and then teach their kid? That's insane.
It takes you back. It really does. And what I see.
Do you see them in them?
Yeah. You see the same mannerisms.
Yeah.
And sometimes they look alike. I mean, Lucas and Peter look alike.
Oh, they really do.
And they have the same mannerisms.
You're going to have to find those moments to be like, you got to stop doing that Peter thing that you're doing that drives me crazy.
Yeah. What becomes a hard thing is I don't want to draw attention to the fact that their parents went here.
Yeah.
Emma Coulter.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I think
Was it her dad or mom?
Her dad.
Her dad, right?
Yeah,
he was
Steve.
just on The Walking Dead this last season. He was quite good.
Steve was in my first third-year class.
So all those parents were here at the same time that we just talked about.
Yeah, so their kids would be here. Oh, Dan Simmons is Gus Halper.
Right.
Yeah. Deanne was in Joe Mantello's class, Peter's class.
Mm-hmm.
I lose track of
That's okay.
of years.
That's okay. I'll let you off the hook for that one, man.
But I feel like a granddad.
Yeah.
Especially when their parents are observing class.
Right.
Or come in.
Have you had a lot of that so far, where you've got like the current student and the alum in the room at the same time, and they're taking math class together?
Never. I've not had that.
Oh, I hope like Lance Lumen comes for parent weekend and does your class with his son.
I don't know if he will, but they've observed classes.
Right.
I don't know if it makes the student, the present student, nervous to have their parents in the room, but I try to lighten it up a little bit.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for talking to me, Bob, for a really long time. I had a really good time.
Thank you. I did too.
I really lost track of it. I didn't plan on that at all, I have to tell you.
So I've been reading about nameless things. Don't ask me what they are. Nietzsche